Yo, what's up Serpa Squad? Tanner here and I'm back with another aquarium build. In this one I'll aquascape the water box Clear 16 for the gold Ring Danios, green Kubotai Rasbora, and perhaps a few other inhabitants. We'll address that in a later video though. For now, let's get to work. Before even thinking of escape, I taped off the edges around the back of the tank. I'll be painting the back of this tank with Rust-Oleum flat black acrylic latex paint. I poured some into a tray and applied it with a nap roller. It took 4 coats of paint to get the desired look. Afterward I removed the tape and got the tank on the stand. Let's go over some of the materials I'm using. For substrate I'll use a mix of Fluval Stratum and Seachem Fluorite Dark. I find that Stratum on its own is hard to work with because it's so light. The rocky nature of fluorite makes the process easier. For hardscape I'm using Pagoda Stone. This is a great stone with a lot of texture. Before use I scrub them down to remove any excess debris. I'll also be using Mupani wood. This is a great hardwood that generally sinks right away. The downside is that it leaches a lot of tannins. To reduce this I soak the wood for a few weeks in a bucket and periodically change the water. I'll also be using some gravel for accent pieces. I like this kind because the angular pieces blend well with a lot of stones that I scape with. However, it needs rinsed thoroughly before use. I also have some garnet sand for use in the foreground. Lastly is a piece of egg crate light diffuser. To start I place the egg crate in the aquarium. This will help evenly distribute the weight of the stones and reduce pressure points. From there I poured in a base layer of stratum to give the hardscape something to rest on. I used a paintbrush to distribute it throughout. Per usual, I created a slope up toward the back for a more dynamic layout. With a layer down I could place my key elements, those being the largest stones and wood. It took me a while to get these to fit right, but eventually I came up with something. Big elements dictate where the smaller items go, so I placed a few of those to ensure I liked the layout. Everything was good, so I took out the largest piece of wood to remove unneeded branches. I made sure to distress the cut end so it didn't look like a man-made feature. I also pulled a few smaller pieces of driftwood from the current Danios scape. Next I placed the big piece back into the scape. Smaller stones and driftwood were then worked into the design. In doing so I had to be conscious of a few things. First are the defined striations on the stones. It's best to keep these features in a consistent direction throughout. It keeps things looking cohesive and natural. I also tried to follow the shapes and flow of the driftwood. The idea is that these are roots or branches that have had a consistent pattern of growth over time. This scape is no different than any others I've done. I let the materials tell me how I should scape it. I go in with a general idea of what I want to create and the materials dictate everything else. For me that's the fun and art behind scaping. In a way I find it very spontaneous. After placing most of the items, I redistributed the layer of stratum. Then I poured in a generous amount of the mixture from earlier. Like before I manipulated the look with a paintbrush. For this tank I'll be using an Aqua Clear 30 hang-on back filter. One of the reasons I designed this tank the way that I did was to hide the filter. As you can see, when it's in the tank it's hidden quite well without being obstructed. Anyway, here's the completed hardscape. I think it turned out pretty well. Now then, let's fill the tank up with some water. I added a scoop of Fritz ACCR water conditioner which was provided by our channel sponsor and got to filling. I'm using the plastic dish to divert the water and make the fill up process as clean as possible. Once the tank was full I primed the filter. I also added some activated carbon to remove any excess tannins and filter floss for fine debris. Let's bring the tank to life with our plants. Everything I'm using here will be pulled from the previous tank. With some of the larger plants removed, I trimmed down the roots and dead foliage to stimulate new growth. First I planted a few Nubius caufifolia in the background. That was followed up with a few Nubius short and sharp. It's important to note that I'm not actually planting these into the substrate. They were just shoved between the driftwood. Next, I wedged needleleaf java fern in crevices throughout the scape. The same was done with the standard java fern in the background. I proceeded to pull even more plants from the previous scape. These are all smaller plants including Bucephalandra wavy green, Bucephalandra black purple, and Anubias nana petite. I broke these up into smaller pieces for better distribution. After processing the plants, I wedged them into crevices like the plants from earlier. The combination of the three will help create good variation in texture. After that, I got several Cryptocorn Wenti bronze and planted them throughout. I also added a few handfuls of Süßwasser tongue to the foreground of the scape. My long-term vision for this is to create a carpet of sorts. From there, I added 3 dwarf aquarium lilies. These are all still pretty small, but they will help add some nice variation as they grow. Lastly, I planted several stem cuttings of Rotala rotundifolia. With all of the plants addressed, I dropped handfuls of gravel in the foreground. As is, I think they stand out a little too much, but they help add some texture. To make things look more natural, I sprinkled garnet sand throughout. I put the fan brush to work and cleaned things up. I also got another piece of driftwood to finalize the scape. From there, I wiped down the glass to remove debris and did a 30% water change. I also added some Fritz 7 live bacteria to get the cycle going. While that settled into the tank, I removed the carbon and floss from the filter. I then took the cycled media and sponge filter from the Danios current tank. I stirred these in some dirty tank water to remove excess debris. The cycled media was combined with new media and put into the filter. Since we added live bacteria and cycled media, we can lightly stock this tank to start. Before doing that, I put a night crew LED light on the tank. This worked really well on the tank I had previously, so I figured I'd give it a go here as well. Then came the tedious task of wrangling all 8 of the gold ring Danios, 5 Amano shrimp, and various snails. Both tanks are kept at room temperature in case you're wondering why I wasn't acclimating the fish. Oh yeah, I also added a Bulbitis Hudaloti. And there you have it, Danioscape 2.0. Even with just the initial setup completed, I think it turned out really well. I can't wait to see it in a few months when the plants grow in though. Then you'll see what this vision truly was for my tank. As you'd probably expect, I'm looking for a densely planted setup with a lot of texture. In time, I know this one will look the part. The water also needs to clear up some, but that's to be expected with a new tank. As many of you know, I have a school of 10 green Kubotai Rasbora that will also go into this setup when they're done with quarantine. I don't think I want to stop the stocking there though. I have a few things in mind, but I'm curious what you think. What is another nano critter that would be perfect for this setup and compatible with the current stock? Let me know. I had a lot of fun with this Aquascape and can't wait to do it again. I'll document my care process for this tank and show it in a later video for those of you who are curious about long-term care. If there's anything specific you want to see in that video, definitely let me know. Anyway, I'm going to sit back and enjoy this living work of art. If you want to see more nature themed builds like this, then stay tuned. I have several aquascapes, vivariums, and other projects lined up in the near future. Until next time,